thank you for coming back. We are in the process of visiting and interrogating our assembly person from the 69th Assembly District, Bob Kulp, and we've got a good start. You certainly have in-depth knowledge on some issues, but let's see if we can't squeeze something in.
Sounds good.
That I think the people are interested in and their community issues. Let's talk about something I've read a little bit about but don't know much about. What is the Rural Wisconsin Initiative?
That's a great question. Yep.
What is it?
It's a group of about, I think there's 30 or 35 legislators around the state, mostly in rural areas, who have basically banded together to say what is important to rural Wisconsin, and put out in the last session as well as in this session bills that are relating to rural Wisconsin, bills that are dealing with the nursing shortage, with broadband access, with any number of things. And I'm one of the 35 members. It's not one of the things that I am leading up down there. It's Representative Romaine Quinn from northwestern Wisconsin is the one that really was kind of the brain behind this and putting it together. But we've come up with some good things. There's not as many things on the agenda this session because we did some things last session. But as we all know, rural Wisconsin is a place that is really a wonderful place to live, and to the extent that the government can provide quality of life, not that it's the government's responsibility to do that necessarily, but to get out of the way and to augment where we can to allow us to continue to have that good rural lifestyle that we all love. That is basically what that group of legislators has come together to put out. So it's a good initiative. As I said, I'm not the leader of it, but good bills.
But a process with individual topics, let's say rural broadband. If there's would there be a proposal coming out of this that would then go to another committee, or I'm just looking at the process?
That's typically the case. What individual legislators within the Rural Wisconsin Initiative do is basically put a bill out that say this would be good for rural Wisconsin, get the rest of the legislators to buy in, and then we all kind of sign on en masse to say let's go ahead and promote this. So broadband is one case where in the governor's budget and in our budget back to the governor that he eventually signed, we actually spent much more money on broadband than we have in the past at the state level. Now, on the federal level, there's been close to $1 billion poured into the state over the course of our state over the course of the last couple of years. And we're getting to the point where we have fewer dead spots, but there are still too many of them. And as you know, broadband is the great equalizer. It tells you the difference between if you can live in rural Wisconsin and telecommute, telehealth, all of those kind of things, or and if you can succeed by doing business on Amazon or any other number of venues. So we see that as the great leveler and as kind of the railroads of the 18th century revisited, or of the interstate highway system, that you kind of need it in order to be functioning and successful in the current era.
Well, for people that, like me, that want to live in the rural areas, Marshfield's basically rural, I mean, all around us, and to move into an area with no internet, reliable, fast broadband, it just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be that important, but it is.
It is, and there are places, Bayfield County, for instance, the entire county, way in northern Wisconsin, has actually, as to my understanding, put fiber to every residence in the entire county.
Really?
And
Really?
that is a huge investment. And Bayfield County saw themselves as the destination and holiday place for people from the Twin Cities and Eau Claire and possibly Chicago, go up there and be able to work as though they were in their office in a high-rise in Minneapolis or in Chicago. So individual counties have done some things. At the state, we've done some things. The feds have done some things. But there's still a lot of work left to be done.
Well, that's something I think is extremely important, both for industry and for health information, and also for, the medical center here is really getting into telehealth on many different levels, and that's helping the folks that are up north, if you would call it that haven't got immediate access to, if you got a tick, and they're coming up where your cabin is or mine is, you can actually, in some cases now, video conference
Yep.
a professional at a nearby medical center and say, oh, that's just a common, ordinary
Yep.
run-of-the-mill deer tick.
Yep.
So,
And that is going to be so helpful as we move along.
so it's really important.
Getting broadband in place is a huge deal.
Absolutely. The Medicaid expansion was an issue that it comes up both nationally and locally, or in Wisconsin, because we did not go along with the expansion that many other states did. Was that something that the governor wanted to join those that accepted, but we have not?
We did not accept that. We took that out of the budget in our response back to the governor, and he eventually signed our budget, of course. But Medicaid expansion is an easy topic to talk about from the governor's perspective, because it's like, this is federal money, we should accept it, we should take it. But it turns into, if you dig below that soundbite, it turns into a much more complex topic than that, because of the fact that we've already expanded, and Wisconsin has some of the best health care in the country as far as no gaps, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, in coverage. Other states that expanded, some of them expanded only to the point where we now are. The federal government would allow us to go from 100% to 138% of federal poverty level by accepting federal dollars and kicking in state dollars. So when the governor and others talk about hundreds of millions of dollars or even $1 billion coming into the state, the side of the ledger that isn't clearly visible in that quick talking point is what it would cost us in addition, plus the fact of who it would take off of the exchange in highly subsidized rates already, and how it would change the rest of the healthcare insurance formula for other people that are now not on that system. So it is a much more complex thing than, this is money we paid in, we should be getting it out. That's an easy soundbite, but underneath it all is the concept that whenever you sign on to what the federal government wants you to do, they do put strings on it to really make it be a much less appealing alternative if you dig one layer beneath the surface.
Sure. And from an individual standpoint, with the very low unemployment we have now, there seems to be less of a need.
I think that may be partly the case. The idea of this was this would fund everything else that the governor wanted to fund in the budget. And we found a way to do tax cuts in the budget without taking away the manufacturing and ag credit, which is what the governor wanted to do. We found ways to fund transportation. We found ways to give more to long-term care providers, which is something the governor didn't have, all without accepting the Medicaid expansion dollars. His big ticket was, let's bring in this $1 billion or whatever that number was, and then we can do all of the other things. We found a way to do all of those other things without having the strings attached. And since our state already had expanded up to a very realistic point to where we have some of the best healthcare coverage of the states, we're like, okay, we're managing it well. Let's continue to manage it well, and let's continue to not be beholden to the federal government.
Okay. Now, the money we had, the state has a surplus, and there was there are issues about some of it should go back to those of us who paid it in, and some should go to a rainy day fund. And what eventually happened?
What ended up happening is we gave the lower two tax brackets a rate percentage drop. So everyone that pays taxes will see less tax on their income tax. We kept property taxes at the same that they were, to the extent that we could. There's obviously that has some local control issues. But then we also, you had a third part to that question, and I'm trying to remember what it was, and because we had talked
surplus,
earlier.
the rainy day fund.
Rainy day fund. Thanks.
I'm for rainy day funds.
The rainy day fund, with this last budget, we actually doubled the rainy day fund, and it was many times greater than what it was 8 years ago. It was almost non-existent, like $1 million in it. Now there is, I'm trying to remember if we took it from 300 some million to 600 million. in any case, it is still not, if you look at other states, it's still not a super flush rainy day fund in the sense that it would fund the state government for 8 or 10 days, which is not enough.
I bet
but
it's more than Illinois.
It's more than Illinois, and the other really good thing is our pension system in the state is 103% funded, and that is based on the only other state that's anywhere close to that is 100% funded. Some of them, like Illinois, are funded very, very poorly as a percentage. So we have the best funded pension and retirement fund system of any of the states, and I think that again shows to good management and shows to understanding how to do it.
Over the years,
Absolutely.
It's been that way.
Yep. It was good 8 years ago. It's better now.
Super. We talked a bit about Medicaid expansion, and I have I do have a background in nursing home management and other human services. I understand that some improvements were made in terms of what caregivers can receive to help enlarge the pool, which is very short right now.
Well, absolutely, and you know that the people that take care of our most vulnerable and most precious people, our loved ones, are really woefully underpaid. And if you've had people that are taking care of them, you know how grateful you are, and then you look at what they make. So we were happy to put $150 million more into caregiver wages. That was something that was a Republican initiative, wasn't something the governor had even considered on his radar screen. So we were like, we have to do this. And we also increased payments to nursing homes by $74 million.
Super.
So we ended up, because a lot of those are closing, and if they close, where do they go? So we took a look at what really needed to be done, and we said, this has to be done, and we were just delighted to be able to deliver on that.
Well, I think that's little known, but very, very, very important. I've talked regularly to people in human services, and it's a real challenge to find people. I mean, there are people that want to do that, but they can't justify working for $12 an hour when you can get 15 at the fast food places.
Yep, and you know, we can't solve the workforce issue. That's one of the. It's also another committee I sit on is workforce development. I had failed to mention that early on. Obviously, we have a deficit of people. We have full employment plus, and we've got some good things going there. But it also makes some challenges.
All right, in 30 words or less, I know you can't meet that challenge. What happened to the education, both in funding and expansion or retraction of charter schools, anything in that area?
Well, education we have funded more by $604 per student over the biennium, more than we did before. And the superintendents that I had sending me emails after the budget passage were like, we're glad it's done, this is a good thing. Obviously the funding formula has some challenges, but we continue to believe that the right place to invest is to allow parents to choose schools that are right for that. Did not change any. So that's a place that I feel very strongly about, that parents know best who to educate rather than just saying it all has to go to one place. Plus it sets up competition if you have choice in charter schools. And I don't think competition has ever been a bad thing for any industry or profession.
Didn't the governor propose to change that somewhat, especially in the metropolitan areas, Milwaukee, Racine, et cetera? He
had proposed to put caps on it, and if you look at the Milwaukee and Racine area schools, they actually save the state money. So that's another part of that equation. Sometimes you hear from people that funding those is taking all the money out of public schools. If you look at both sides of the balance sheet, it's not as easy as just they're stealing from us.
All right. Now we'll go to the easiest of all the questions, because you've been very kind at being receptive to my very difficult questions. All right, this one. What the heck is going on with transportation? We want better roads, and you're on that committee along with Mr. Sparrows.
I am. You know, and Joint Finance, of course, makes the decisions based on funding of the roads.
Sure.
We do a lot of very good things in the Transportation Committee. But the governor's proposal was to put 8 cents more per gallon onto the gas tax. And I would have supported that, because it has been 2006 since the raw dollars have actually gone up, and this is 13 years later. So when is a good time to talk about that 30 cents back in 2006 doesn't buy in 2019 what it did? I thought it was a good time to do it. There was, on the Senate side, there was some opposition to that. So what we did was we had to come up with a way to actually fund the roads. So we had the biggest increase in transportation funding in a decade or more go in without raising the gas tax, which wouldn't have been a place that I would have drawn the line, but ended up being where the Senate was, and to cost an average Wisconsin taxpayer less. So what we did is we put $100 or $95 more on your title transfer fees. So that's only when you trade in a vehicle. That's not a yearly thing. That's only when you trade in a vehicle. Plus we did $9 more on your yearly registration. So every year it costs you $9 more. And when you trade in a car, it costs you $95
Assuming
more.
you buy another one?
Assuming you buy another
So
one.
if we have two and we drop one, it's...
Yeah, and it's only when you title a vehicle in the state. And you know, if it was a compromise, and that's what you have to do when you are dealing with a split governance, and especially different philosophies even within the Senate and the Assembly. It's important to be able to say, how do we really make the railroads work, and make the roads work in this case, and make them be on time and done, and not cost Wisconsin taxpayers more. And I could run through the formula of how much it saves most people. I won't do that, but it will cost Wisconsin taxpayers less on average than the governor's alternative. What it doesn't do is reach into Illinois and Minnesota and Michigan
And get the
drivers and
gas
other
tax
drivers
from them.
from the others.
And there
So
was-
it costs us less, but it also costs them nothing. So that's not necessarily the best.
And the titling fee would apply to energy efficient or
All vehicles.
all hybrids or
Yep.
neighborhood electric vehicles,
That is
et cetera.
correct.
So we get something out of
Yep.
that. It's a complex issue, but all politics are local. I heard that someplace. Now you frequently come down Highway 97. You were probably down 97 this morning.
I was.
That's not a very safe road between where you live and work and Marshfield, especially during the early morning and
Yep.
late afternoon rush hours.
Yep. And it isn't because there's a differing traffic styles, and somebody's going 45 and somebody wants to go 65 and they want to pass, and it's kind of all about impatience. I'm actually looking forward to the day when we're in driverless vehicles, because then there'll be a
Staged.
there'll be a set.
We'll all move at the
and,
same
and,
time.
and I can tell you, my adaptive cruise control has really done wonders for me, because I plug it in when I hit Stratford. I go, set the cruise at 58 or 59. And if the vehicle in front of me slows down, I slow down, and I know I'm
Yeah.
going to get there on time and be safe. So really, it's not the road that's unsafe, it's the drivers that are unsafe. And that's something that just has to do with the heavily traveled roads, people with impatience.
And and some people get frustrated because this time of year the farmers are out working,
Yeah.
and but farmers feed us.
They have to be
And
out there.
They
Yep.
work harder than most of us
They-
ever did.
Yep. They
And
have to be out there.
I never get frustrated with them, but other people do, and they want to pass, and they want
Yep.
to,
And it's
but-
not even legal to pass a farm vehicle on, no matter what speed they're going, if you have a yellow line. I only
Oh, yeah.
learned that recently, that in the last couple of years, that it's against the law to pass a farm vehicle if there is any yellow line there. So.
Yeah, and it should be that way.
Yeah.
It's well, 97 is, and the 10 is certainly, when you get to the west of us, it's, 10 is risk, because there's a lot of farmers out there.
Yeah.
And milk trucks.
Yep, without a doubt. But again, it boils down to defensive driving and being patient and saying, I'll get there on time, and leaving 5 minutes early, but that's typically why that road is as dangerous as it is.
Well, we put up with slow-moving trains. Actually, they're not so slow; they go really fast.
Yeah.
But
You
they're
have to
long
park
trains.
and wait, yeah.
You're right. It's just a matter of being patient and kind to
Yeah.
other people. But an intersection at C towards Roselleville is particularly dangerous because there's a lot of traffic coming from that area, and I think there's been a number of accidents. I
I'm
know the
always on
DOT
higher alert at that intersection myself, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be one of those roundabout areas. I don't know if they could do it that far out of the city limits.
No, I think the best place, they could, but I think one of the best places for a roundabout would be at McMillan and 97.
That too.
Or AAA and 97.
Yeah.
I think that's an ideal location for one.
Well, it's a problem that I guess I mean, there is a way for the projects to be enumerated, and hopefully there would be some relief. I know for the accident rates are studied.
Yeah.
And if it's too high, somebody will do something sooner or later.
I'm just happy we got Central Avenue finally being repaved. Of course, I wish we would have been able to get a complete reconstruction of it, but we'll do it again in 25 or 30 years. But for a while, it'll be smooth.
Yes, and I rode on it this way. I drove my car on the good part, and it's really nice compared to
It shook
what
your
it
vehicle
was in
apart,
the past.
That 6-block section of
Yeah,
roads.
I know my auto mechanic guy isn't too happy because he enjoyed fixing all the vehicles that had problems with hitting potholes and one thing or another, knocking things loose. Bob, we've taken a lot of your time, but we really appreciate you coming in and
Oh, my
sharing your
pleasure.
views with us. As things move along, if something interesting comes along, just give us a call. We are not MCTV anymore. We are Marshfield Media Access, and we have multiple platforms. We're going out on YouTube, Facebook, you name it, where they can find a site. We're going to be on there, and we hope to encourage people to, if they have ideas on programming, to give us a call at City Hall or the Communications Department, or even drop me an email or so. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you so
Excellent.
much.
It's always good.
And have a good rest of the week.
You got it. Thank you.